Hello again, this is the first chapter, actually the first segment of the first chapter, which is a brief idea and understanding of how a home purchase transaction fall in place and how does the flow process goes, what happens. So here is a home buyer, and let me choose a better tool for the for so you can see it better probably. uh, hmm, I guess I don't know. Well, let's put it this way. This is the buyer, this one here, and I might be able to kind of circle things. Here's the buyer. Now the buyer goes to the real estate agent. This is starting point. It goes that way, and say I want to buy a house. Okay, very good. So the real estate agent, before they start showing properties, what they do is they will pass them to a loan officer. So the loan officer will qualify them based on their credit and their income and their debts and everything, to tell the real estate agent what is the maximum home purchase price they can qualify for. So now after they do go through the qualification with the loan officer, the loan officer will release a pre-qualification letter or pre-approval letter for the real estate agents to start show properties. So now the real estate agent will find a property to the home buyer by showing them, driving them, and then once they find the property, they will submit an offer to the seller. They will submit the offer. I did not put the arrow here, but here there's supposed to be an arrow. Submit an offer to the seller. Now the seller will review the offer, and if the seller accepted the offer, so this is the acceptance, then the real estate agents will go ahead and will open escrow on this property. Will open escrow, that means we'll get a third party company that is an escrow company that will be the median in the transaction, will hold the buyer, the seller, the banks, the realtors, everything, to handle the transaction. And that's when the buyer also will put their initial deposit to, as a good faith, to start the transaction. Every transaction, every buyer must put a deposit for escrow to open. And then once escrow is open, the bank will be notified to start the loan. The bank, which is the lender, which is like us, then we will submit the loan to the bank. We will work with the bank and with the client to get all the documentations required. We will clear everything with the bank on the loan side, and then once that is done, the bank will release the final loan documents. The final loan documents will be signed by the buyer. After the buyer signed the final loan docs, then the bank will release the money to escrow. Then escrow, when they receive the money, they will see, does this home has a loan on it? If this home has a loan on it, first they pay the loan on this home, and then the remaining amount they pay all the bank fees and all the fees of the transaction, and whatever is left, it goes to the seller. And then from this point on, the buyer, once that happens and the money is distributed between the current loan, the seller, the closing cost, then the home buyer pretty much own the property and they can walk in and take over the property. So let me recap it and put it for the second time, so kind of it will sink in a little bit. Again, the buyer will come in to buy a house. The first thing they have to go to is a real estate agent. The real estate agent will understand what they want, and he will connect them with the loan officer. The loan officer will qualify them, so the real estate agents will know how much they would be buying a home for. So once they know how much they're buying, once the loan officer qualify them, will release a pre-qualification letter or a pre-approval letter to the real estate agent so he can start show properties. The real estate agent will find the property to the buyer. They will put an offer to the seller. Now if the seller accepted the offer and replied, Then the next step, the loan officer will, the real estate agent will open escrow for the buyer, along with an initial deposit. And the first good faith deposit, normally it's about 1% of the purchase price. And then by putting the deposit in escrow, they will notify the loan officer to proceed with the loan. The loan officer will make sure that his package is all in place and will ask for additional documentations from the escrow company and from the real estate agent, like the purchase contract, the different forms that is needed. And then the loan officer will submit the loan to the bank. Once the loan is received by the bank, the loan will be approved. The approval will be sent to us. We will review it. Whatever the bank need in documentations, we will provide. Once everything is clear, they will release what we call loan documents. The loan documents is needed so that way it will secure the seller, and it will secure the buyer, it will secure every aspect of the transaction. Then the loan document will go to the buyer through the escrow company for the buyer to sign them. Once they are signed, they come back to the bank, and then the bank will release the fund to escrow. Escrow, then they have to pay their own fees. They have to pay what the property owe. If there's any loan currently owed on the property, then they will pay the seller. They will pay the closing costs on the whole transaction, whatever costs occur on the whole transaction, and then they will inform the buyer that they can move in the property. This is the flow process of a purchase transaction.